Now, we're so pleased to be joined by my friend and a career national correspondent, and most importantly, a former Trump administration official and senior advisor, Olivia Troye. Olivia, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having me. Woohoo, go career.
I'm always very excited to talk to you and vent with you and all of the things, but very excited and delighted to do it here with Simon as well. And want to kind of talk first with our audience, just for you to share. You're really heavily involved with the Harris Walls campaign as a surrogate for the campaign. And the campaign has been investing pretty heavily, from what we can see on the outside, in really building a very strong and diverse coalition of supporters across this country for their ticket, but also, of course, to oppose Trump at the polls and his party ticket. And so would love to just have you kind of go big and broad and talk about what that sort of looks like, being part of the campaign in that effort and the specific role you're playing. And then we can kind of go from there, because I'm really eager to hear what you're hearing on the ground from voters.
Yeah, sure. I have been very impressed with Kamala Harris's team and the way they're approaching this campaign. They have definitely done the work to build out an on the ground infrastructure across the battleground states. And they've specifically invested in reaching sort of the reachable middle, is what we call it, like the center right, center left voters. And more especially, they're really looking at trying to impact disaffected Republicans, and they're also doing a lot of outreach to the Haley voters that we saw come out in the primary against Trump. There's a significant size of them. I know, the word on the street, as my best friend from kindergarten always says, was that these were all Democrats that had signed up in the primary. The reality is that that's actually not true. There are a lot of Republicans that were really just fed up with Trump and were trying to push him off the ticket. Obviously, it didn't happen. So here we are. But I think it has been interesting. I've been part of this from really day one. And I think it's been inspiring in many ways to see sort of the development at the national level. But honestly, it's been so hopeful to me to see what's happening at the ground level, because I've been going to the events, I've been going to House events, and we're getting like a good 150 people sometimes at people's homes gathering, and these are local residents to the areas that are Republicans or independents that are saying that they're fed up with what they're seeing, and they're starting to kind of stand together. And I think for a while it felt very isolated being a Republican standing against Trump, kind of in my own little island here at times. But I do think that there's something that the tide is changing. And yeah, and so I guess I'll tell you a little bit. We did a major event yesterday, which was awesome.
Yeah, I saw some
And
of the
it was,
clips
yeah.
on social, where I watch anything that has to do with this election, as you know, but it looked massive. So yeah, set the scene for us. What was the event? Who was hosting it and speaking at it?
So it was the VP herself. So Kamala Harris did speak at the event, and it was a Republicans for Harris rally. And it basically brought together hundreds of Republicans. A few of us were on stage with her, and it was former Republican members of Congress that were there, and just Republican state leaders, and then just part of this broader coalition. And a lot of Republicans in the audience, obviously. And I think it was inspiring. Jeff Duncan was there. He's a former lieutenant governor of Georgia. Adam Kinzinger spoke. He's former congressman for Illinois. We had Jim Greenwood, who's also a former congressman, who's actually former congressman from Pennsylvania. And then I spoke as well. And then the VP was obviously the headliner, and she delivered what I would say was such an amazing and powerful speech that I would say is unprecedented for these times. She really just talked about what, building these bridges across party lines and how she's very committed to it. I think it really resonated with the audience. She was very powerful about pushing back on Donald Trump and some of the things that he's been saying lately. And sort of, I think one of the lines that I think landed the best with the audience, and this was mentioned to me from a couple of the attendees, because I stayed afterwards to meet people at the event and really check on them and see how it's going out in Pennsylvania. And she said to them,
anyone who tramples on our democratic values, as Donald Trump has, anyone who has called for the, quote, termination of the Constitution of the United States, as Donald Trump has, must never again stand behind the seal of the President of the United States. Never again. Never again.
she nailed that line. And the response from the crowd, I mean, they went wild. It was nuts. And it was just truly inspiring to see just Republicans and Democrats coming together for the greater the good of the country, which is, traditionally we're very divided. We're very much in our party lines. Simon's laughing like, who are you telling, right? But it was just different. There was definitely a spirit of unity at this event, and it was camaraderie and just leaning on each other. And, she shook everyone's hands on stage. We went with her backstage, had conversations with her, and she's just seems very invested in being a president for all. And I think that was the overall tone of it. And and then it was a good warm up for her to be around us, Republicans, because then she went into the Lion's Den and went to Fox News and did that amazing interview. So, we hope that we were like, we have your backs, is what we said to her. And we were cheering her on as she went in because we knew it would be combative. Let's be honest. This was going to be an interesting situation with Fox News, no matter what.
Well, and Olivia, you touched on something I would like you to dive into a little bit more, which is this idea of feeling alone, but not feeling alone anymore. It seems like this is so critical. We call it permission structure, that you and Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney are creating a permission structure for other people who feel that the way that you do to join you in abandoning Trump. And Adam Kinzinger, I thought at the convention also had one of you had a great line about how, not voting for the Republicans is not a betrayal, but it's a sign of patriotism, right? That you're doing the right thing for the country. But talk a little bit about that sense of community, and that if you felt alone and now you're not feeling alone, what does it mean when you go into somebody's house and there are 100, 150 people there who didn't know and they see other people like them, right? Talk about that dynamic and how far along you think we really are in that, because this was always, to me, one of the great opportunities of this campaign was that this was there for us. We could see it in the Haley vote. We could see it what happened in 2022. We know that in France and in Europe just recently, that center-right voters, when it came down to it, they abandoned the fascists and chose other options because they understood the gravity of the threat. We just saw this happen, right, in major elections in Europe, a very similar dynamic that we want to have happen here, right, where Republicans, the far-right fascists in Europe underperformed their polling because when people actually had to go vote, they just couldn't vote for the fascists, right? Just give us your assessment from inside about the sense of community that's being built and what you think it means for this election and even beyond.
I think it's hard to be I guess what I would say, a old school Republican these days, because there is a lot of bullying that goes on. And you really end up feeling like the extreme arm of the party has taken over, which it really has. But it just feels lonely because they want, and I think, they're doing it on purpose, right? That's how authoritarian and fascism kind of works. They want you to feel isolated, and they want to feel like they have control and that you're on the outskirts of it. And if you stick your neck out, you're crossing the line, and they want you to feel scared. And I think, quite honestly, I think that's a lot of what we're seeing on the ground, is that there's been a lot of Republicans. And look, I'm just going to be very honest with you. There's Republicans that have said to me, like, I'm going to vote for her. I'm just not putting a sign in my yard because I don't want to be targeted by the rest of my community here. And that's sad, right? Because to me, that speaks of where we are as a country. And I feel like one of the most important things for us is democracy and the right to vote and our liberty and our freedom to do that. And it used to be that we would be celebrating elections, right? And the right to vote, regardless of who we were voting for. And for me, as a national security person, it makes me very sad, having deployed to countries where I've seen people or women have the right to vote for the first time, and how proud they are and how much they share in that pride, regardless of who you're voting for as a candidate. And we have really, I would say, gone backwards in this in terms of our country. And so I lay that as a groundwork because that's why I think, to me, it's inspiring to see these communities coming together and saying, hey, like, I'm actually not alone in this town. I'm not actually I felt like I was the only one, and I didn't want to, talk about it. I don't want to talk about it out loud. I'm not going to acknowledge it. But the whole hope is that by setting the permission structure, like you put it, Simon, that hopefully it's an example for others that we can do this, and we can do this together. And, do I think it's enough to make a difference in this election? I actually do, because it feels just very different than it did for someone like me in 2020 when I first went public against Trump. And in 2022, it just feels like there are more voices that are willing to talk about this and be more open, and actually there's a lot more like more people that I would say are fed up with what has happened here under Donald Trump. Now, I say that because I think, you know, I always say like we have to welcome these people into the fold. There's been conversations. I've gotten messages from people that are like, I'm not going to lie to you. I've voted for Donald Trump like the last 2 times, and I was really actually considering it. Like I've been voting for the MAGA candidates. I voted for the MAGA candidates in 2022. I'm now kind of looking back on that and really, starting to assess like, I guess, was I part of the damage? That was one conversation I had with someone yesterday in Pennsylvania. And my advice to them, my counsel, I guess, was I think, we can all reflect on what we're seeing here as being part of the GOP and what's happened in the past. But the important thing is right now that we're actually making a difference to bring others into the fold in that way, in that spirit, to make a difference together. And I know everyone, knows that this election, it's been said that it's going to be close. We're just hoping that enough of those quiet voices will be the ones voting. And I just, I have faith that there will be that voting block that's there. They just may not be the loudest. But I think events like yesterday, where you have the show of numbers, you have these, the two farmers. There were actually, I should talk about this because this is amazing. There's two lifelong farmers in Pennsylvania that have been lifelong Republicans. And the husband got up there and he was like, look, I voted for him twice. It was actually kind of cute. He looked at his wife. He's like, my wife wisened up. She only voted for him once.
We have been Republicans all our lives. We both voted for Donald Trump. I voted for him twice. It made sense. We are Republicans. You vote for the Republican candidate. I should make a note, Christina was ahead of the learning curve. She only voted for him once.
Which also I was like, of course it's the women. But anyways, I'm not going to say always women knew. Yeah, of course it's the women. But I thought that was very impactful because these are not people that, are sitting there saying like, I've become a full Democrat. I believe in everything. Like, no, they're telling you like, no, I've been a very true Trump Republican, but I've reached the limit and I just want something better for our country. And just someone who's owned a farm. It's just been in his family for 3 generations, and he owns a farm in Pennsylvania. Now, the counter to that, I will say, is they have gotten the threats. They've gotten the bullying. They've gotten the intimidation. And, has it kind of given them like pause? I mean, has it scared them? Probably a little bit. I talked to them and they were like, I was like, would you change your mind? And they said, no, absolutely not. We know that this is the right thing for the country. And I think it's important for people to see just everyday Americans like that are standing together. And I saw the vice president, the way she interacted with them. And I have to say, like, it's just, I've been around a lot of politicians, I'll say that, and a lot of cabinet level people. And I have, I think you can tell when something is genuine or an act. And I really, truly, honestly believe that she is genuine interactions with people.
And Olivia, I just want to underscore the bravery it takes because I know I've known you a while and it was a lot lonelier and it is incredible. I got goosebumps when I watched clips of that event that you spoke at this week and just all of the people in the crowd. And it is a testament to what you and Simon were talking about a permission structure is that there is power in numbers. Seeing people gather and all be comfortable and feel safe and excited even to come out and show their support for this ticket together is incredible. And on the other side of it, to your point, the vice president in embracing this community and embracing this. And I do want to touch on the Fox News interview this week because I thought it was incredible. I thought it was an incredible interview by the vice president. I think that she was strong and assertive and also just the fact that she went on Fox, I think is incredibly noteworthy about reaching out and going directly to these audiences and to Republicans and to be able to say, look, I like you hear all this stuff about me, but here is actually where I stand. Here is, who I am on it. And so would love to have you sort of reflect on that. I know one of the most viral moments, of course, about it was when she really took Brett Baier to task on the Trump
Yes.
repetitive enemy within comments and would love to hear how that sort of sits with you and the community of Republicans supporting Harris on the ticket.
I thought it was great that she called him out on it in real time. I mean, that was incredible. The fact that she just immediately was like, no, actually, what you're showing that clip is incorrect.
Brett, I'm sorry, and with all due respect, that clip was not what he has been saying about the enemy within that he has repeated when he's speaking about the American people. That's not what you just showed.
Well, he was asked about that
No,
specific...
that's not what you just showed. In all fairness and respect to you,
that was the question that we asked him.
You didn't show that, and here's the bottom line. He has repeated it many times, and you and I both know that. And you and I both know that he has talked about turning the American military on the American people. He has talked about going after people who are engaged in peaceful protest. He has talked about locking people up because they disagree with him. This is a democracy.
I mean, it was kind of like disinfo in real time, right? What they were trying to do. And they were obviously playing a game of like got you and covering for Trump in some way. I mean, that's what they do. But I think it was commendable that she was like, no, let's, and she did it, I thought, by the way, in a very diplomatic way, right? I like the fact that she said, with all due respect, that's not what he said. Let me clarify for you. And then, of course, it doesn't take long, because the good thing about Donald Trump is like he repeats himself over and over as ridiculous, whatever it is that he said it. He's not just going to say it once. He can't help himself. So he then goes out and confirms it again, right? And all these other things. So it's not like we can say, oh, well, he only said it once. No, he's actually reminding us that he did say the enemy within is our other Americans, which is quite appalling for someone that wants to be in the Oval Office again. The fact that he would say that. But, I think she was powerful in the interview. I think it was clear that she was very prepared for the type of environment that she would be walking into. Did I think that he came in aggressive and combative, and even his demeanor towards her was, in keeping what I figured would likely happen? I will say that, I had a hard time, I was listening to it actually when we were driving back from the event in Pennsylvania, and it was hard to not get annoyed and angry at his demeanor towards her, the way he kind of behaved. Especially, I just felt, I try to I rarely go here, but I'm going to go here right now. I really just felt that it was obvious the double standard against a woman, and the way he was behaving in his body language was really, rubbing me the wrong way. And I went back and looked at the clips after listening in the car, and I was like, yeah, that's exactly what I thought it was going to be. But she had solid policy answers too, right? I mean, that was so great. She was pushing back with substantive things that would never happen in a Donald Trump interview. She was in a very hard environment, and she held her own, I thought. And she held her own in a very substantive way.
Well, and can I just comment on that? I did thousands of appearances on Fox over 17 years. I was on 2 to 3 days a week during the entire Obama administration. And, I was never paid. And I did it in part, and I think this is what's so important about what happened yesterday. I did it in part because I wanted to show Republicans that there were Democrats who were willing to engage in civil dialogue.
Yes.
And it was a sign of respect. I was showing up in their place, and I never got angry. The key was you can't ever get rattled. You can't ever get, frustrated. But I felt this was an important thing for our democracy, that I was going into Fox News and demonstrating respect for the people there and speaking truth, and staying in my place and telling my story. And I think as part of the cultivation of the world that you're part of, the idea that she went into the media of the right, it was a sign of respect, right, to this community. And I think however the combative nature of it was,
Mm-hmm.
the sort of the big message was, I'm going to talk to you guys. You're part of my world, right? I'm not going to go into my silo over here. I mean, we're going to engage. So I applaud the courage that she showed. It was, as somebody, again, who has gone on with Hannity and with everybody, and I didn't go on with Brett that much. I was a little surprised with how aggressive he was in the beginning, right? In particular.
Yes. He wouldn't let her talk.
No, he wouldn't let her talk, and he was trying to rattle her. I mean, this is a tactic, right? But I know we have to go, Olivia, and maybe we can have you back on before we go. But I also want to echo something that Tara said, is that I just want to say, as a fellow patriot, I'm so grateful for what you're doing. I'm so proud of you. The courage that you've demonstrated throughout all of this, the courage that all of you are demonstrating in taking on your party and taking on Donald Trump and building this permission structure and community. It is the highest form of patriotism, in my view. And I just want to go on record, as Tara did, as saying, thank you for what you've been doing and what you're going to do, because we're going to win this fucking thing. And, and we're going to make Kamala Harris the president. And she is going to be the president of all Americans and not just Democrats.
And I can't wait to debate and
I think they would
argue
agree with that.
issues with you at some point, for us to have the the
What's that
privilege
like?
to do that,
I don't
Olivia.
know.
We haven't disagreed on anything since we met.
I know that is true, which says a lot. Where are we as a country, right?
Yeah.
The
Best
more and
of
more
it.
the greater common good. Exactly.
Best of
I
it.
will, I so much appreciate both of your sentiments. And I'll say this. I think what is important, I think, to remember is that, those of us can take a stand, and it is hard. It is very hard to be in this space, and it can be ugly, and the threats and the harassment are ongoing. But you're playing a critical role as well by accepting us, right? It's about accepting us and just having our backs and saying, like, here we are, we're in this together. And I think that's a piece of it that's important to remember, right? Is that we're also leaning on you all, because we're kind of walking in no man's land here, and you guys and Kamala Harris, the Harris team, could have just been like, yeah, you know, we're going to do this on our own, and you guys do your own thing. But I think it is very true that we're stronger together, I think. But it's been in great part because you've welcomed us in the vote, right? We didn't have to speak at the DNC, but we were invited to, and we were welcomed to speak at the DNC. And I think that's, speaks volumes about you all. And I'm grateful. Can't believe I'm about to say this. I'm grateful to the Democrats that are doing this right now, because I think that we are at a moment where it really is country over party, and we're seeing it from both sides. And I think that we should talk about that, because it is both sides bridging this, because we wouldn't be able to do it if both sides were kind of sitting in silo and not
Right.
extending that hand.
And if we can expand on that to actually govern that way, imagine that.
Yes.
Disagree on ideas and solutions, but not actually the common threads between us. That's the goal.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Olivia, for everything and for joining us. And I hope we get to talk soon.
Yes. Thank you all.
Thank you. Good luck on the trail.
Thanks, Olivia.